All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining our webinar. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are joining from. I'm Ryan Keller. And today we're going to be taking a look at modern SharePoint themes and site scripts and site designs. So hopefully this will be an informative session, give you a good idea of how modern themes work, how we can build our own custom themes, and what the heck is a site script and a site design, and how can they help us with our modern SharePoint branding. It's got a lot to cover, so let's just go ahead and get started here. All right, there's me. Again, I'm Ryan Keller. I'm a senior SharePoint consultant at Pate Group here. Been with the company since 2016, primarily focused on branding and design in SharePoint. Been working with SharePoint for a little over 13 years now. Been a consultant for a little over 11 of those years. Makes me feel extremely old looking at those numbers. But anyway, enough about me. Let's get into the fun stuff. All right, so let's start out with a real brief history of SharePoint branding and themes. So basically, how did we get from there to here? Kind of what's the history and how did we end up where we're at? So back in SharePoint 2007, which seems like 100 years ago at this point, that was the first time that master pages and page layouts were first introduced into the SharePoint platform that let us really fully customize SharePoint to whatever we wanted it to look like. It was the first time, since SharePoint was introduced that we had full control over the branding and the look and feel of SharePoint. There were also themes included with SharePoint 2007, and you could also make our own custom themes. They were CSS based, so you kind of reskinned the out-of-the-box look and feel. So you actually had a lot of control and a lot of things you could do with a simple theme in 2007 without having to really get into the meat of the master page and page layouts if you didn't really want to. Then fast forward a couple of years to SharePoint 2010, we're still using master pages and page layouts for full-on customizations. These are just out-of-the-box screenshots here. But in 2010, they revamped the theming engine, so we could still customize a little bit. If we didn't want to get into the master pages and page layouts, we could still give our site a little bit of a custom look by using themes, but it was a completely different theming engine. It wasn't CSS based. You actually had to go into PowerShell to make your Office theme and then upload that into SharePoint. Fast forward a few more years to SharePoint 2013, and then by extension 2016 and 2019, and classic SharePoint Online sites, since they all are very, very similar from a branding perspective. They were similar to 2010, still using master pages and page layouts for full custom branding endeavors. There was the inclusion of the snippet gallery in SharePoint 2013 to try and make custom branding a little bit more accessible, and it worked to a degree, but a lot of people who worked with SharePoint branding still prefer the old method of getting our hands wet and our hands dirty in the master pages, making our own custom master pages and kind of ignoring the snippet gallery. And then again, the theming engine was revamped. The themes were more XML based this time. And they could be created using the SharePoint color palette tool, because of a standalone utility that you could download and install on your machine and play with the different color buckets. And that was kind of nice. Now we have arrived at modern SharePoint Online sites. So do we have master pages? No. Do we have any more page layouts? Nope. All our pages now are designed on the fly, using different sections and section layouts and columns. So we don't have any need for pre-configured page layouts like we did in classic SharePoint or SharePoint on-prem all the way back to SharePoint 2007. So it's all built kind of on the fly, and our custom looks are now not so custom. It's all very out of the box. So when we say, a custom look and feel, what we're really talking about is being able to bring in custom colors. And using those custom themes that we're going to take a look at today, and how we can utilize those to kind of brand this out-of-the-box SharePoint into something that looks more like something that belongs to your organization. The other way that we achieve a custom looking site is through the use of just good layout, taking advantage of what Microsoft gives us in the sections and the different columns and the web parts, and using good imagery to just really make the page visually engaging. There are also ways that you can customize this with SharePoint Framework extensions, but that's not at all what we're going to get into today. What we're going to focus on more today is just themes. So we're not even really going to get into layouts and putting together a nice looking page. That might be a topic for another webinar. But we're really going to focus today on themes and site designs and what those all mean and how they work together. We do have several out-of-the-box themes available, and we can create custom themes and install those as well, like I just said, and that's what we're really going to get into today. So real quick demo, just to kind of get everybody in on the same page here as far as themes go. So here is my out-of-the-box SharePoint online site. Just a fresh site I made yesterday, getting ready for this. Let's take a look at a couple of different theming options. So there's two places really that we can set themes. We can set a theme on the page. If I go into my settings gear and hit change the look, there we go, and open up the theme panel here. So here are all the out-of-the-box SharePoint online themes. So we have a dark blue and a dark yellow. We have some couple of nice dark themes, some light themes here. Purple, red, blue, teal. So there's a really good chance that most of these themes aren't going to match what you have for your organization's brand colors. So what do we do about that? Well, first off, we need to make a custom theme, which we'll get into in just a minute. But I did want to just kind of show you how these themes behave and what they do. So you noticed, obviously, as I'm clicking around, that certain parts of the UI are kind of recoloring as I do that. Like the footer down at the bottom there, some of these web part pieces, this little logo also is recoloring here. Let me cancel out of that real quick. So that's kind of out of the box themes and what they look like. The other place that we need to set themes, or that we can set themes, is this little top suite bar here, the top navigation bar. That is a global setting in the admin center. So a lot of times we'll do a nice custom theme, but this standard SharePoint blue just doesn't go with our theme color. So we can change that. It's definitely possible. You need to have global admin privileges to do that. So if you're a designer and you don't have global admin privileges, but you know somebody who does, you can figure out your color scheme and everything, and then send that information to your admin, and they can plug this in. It's pretty simple to do, and that is done in the admin center again. So you click on your waffle menu, head down to your admin center. Once that opens, we'll take a look and see where this is. We're looking for the settings drop down here. If you don't see your settings, because maybe you haven't customized your navigation, or maybe it's just hidden, there's a couple ways to do that. You can click this customize navigation link here and then make sure that settings is showing, or you can just click the show all and every single setting will show up for your SharePoint Online Admin Center, your Microsoft 365 Admin Center. So since this is an organizational setting, I'm going to look under Settings, Org Settings, and finally the Organization Profile tab. And I am looking for this Custom Themes link. All right, so what does this panel give us? It gives us a lot of different options here. So we can add in an image, little logo image up in the top here, and that will appear between the waffle menu and the text next to that. So we can take a look at that in a second. So we can use a custom logo image. We can make the logo clickable. So if we want to send people back to our home page, or if we want to send people to, your public site, there's all kinds of stuff you can do with that clickable logo there. So that's one option. You can also add in a background image. They give you the dimensions for the image and the file size, no more than 15K. So there are some restrictions on that, but basically you want a background that's probably looking more like a repeating pattern than anything else, because it will fill the background bar as much as it can. So you're probably looking at more of a, again, more of a repeating background rather than just a static picture, just as a tip there. And finally, we get into the navigation bar color. So in SharePoint, we get the standard SharePoint blue. In a lot of other places like the Admin Center, it's already set to black. So we can change that navigation bar color up top. We can also change the text color and the accent color. The accent color being when you hover over these guys here, what the background looks like right here now. Since we don't have a theme installed, it's just using its not a theme installed. Since we haven't set anything, it's just using its standard pre-configured colors. So again, let me open up this custom themes here, and let's take a look at what happens when we color this. So I am going to click on the color here, and it opens up a color picker. So I can change this to be basically whatever color I want. If I want it to be a light, kind of pinky salmon color, I can do that. If I want it to be kind of a lime green or a dark, really dark purple, I can do that too. But let's do something that's going to mesh with the custom theme that we're going to make later. And that happens to be, see if I got my number right. Not that. That's right. One little tip, if you're trying to type in here, it's probably not going to work. This is more just for displaying what color is selected. If you want to change it manually and set your hex color, you can do that in the color picker itself. And I'm going to do 477 F70, kind of a dark tealy color here. I think I'll leave the text and icon color white. And, let's change that accent color to something that kind of complements that. There we go. Let me set this to 477 F70 again, and then maybe we'll choose something a little darker when we hover over that. All right, so we got our color set. Let me go ahead and click on Save Changes. And as soon as that's done here, and we scroll back up, we'll see a nice green bar that says our changes have been saved. It'll be applied across Office 365 soon. So this is not an instant change. It does take it a little bit of time to actually show up throughout Office 365. I've seen it take anywhere from 30 seconds to maybe 10 minutes. Somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes nowadays seems to be about the average time that it takes to have that theme update and propagate throughout the sites. But let me open that up one more time, and we will add in a custom logo just so you can see what that looks like. So I'm going to click this drop down here, use a custom logo image. I'm going to upload an image, and I'm going to browse for that image, and not that. Where is my, here we go. We want this logo right here. And I'm going to go ahead and save the changes again. There we go. All right, let me go ahead and refresh this page and see if that changes have been added. There we go. So here's what it's going to look like with that green color added across the top. So in the Admin Center, that's the first thing that gets updated. So you can see that I've got my logo now. You can see that I've got that accent color. When I hover over those icons, and my text color I left white. All right, so let's go ahead and jump back over to my site. I'm going to open up my SharePoint Admin Center here. I could just manually type that, but let's just do it this way for fun. All right.
Hey, Ryan.
Yeah.
Quick question. Are there any limits on logo file types for uploading?
Not necessarily. I think, let's see here. It tells you it needs to be a JPEG, PNG, GIF, or GIF if you prefer, or an SVG. So pretty much any image type will work. It does automatically scale it to no more than 30 pixels high and no more than 200 pixels wide. So as you see here, my logo file is actually quite a bit bigger than this, but it's doing some automatic image scaling to keep it nice and compact for the logo there.
Perfect. Thank you.
Bet. All right, and SharePoint's having a good day because my suite bar or navigation bar up top is already showing my new theme color. So that's awesome. I've done this demo before and it has taken like 30 or 40 minutes for that to show up. So that's awesome. Gone through the whole demo before and it's never changed on the SharePoint side. So we're ahead of it now. So that's great. All right. So again, we got our out of the box themes under change the look and theme. And, you know, that's probably the closest color here that we've got to our official green color that we're going to be working with. You know, this green, not quite so much. So now that we know what color we need to work with, none of these out of the box themes are going to cut it. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to have to make our own theme here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save this just so we have something to switch it out from later. Okay. There's our site. There's our out of the box theme. It's not working. We've set our global theme. We're happy there. Let's move on and see what else we're going to cover here. So creating custom themes. We can make our custom themes using the theme designer that Microsoft has given us. There's no built-in theming capabilities in your SharePoint tenant. There is, as part of Microsoft's Fluent UI or Fabric UI, they do have a theme designer out there. It's pretty nice, and you can get to it at this URL. There's a really long, ugly URL that it's actually living at, but they have a nice URL shortener here. It's aka.ms/theme designer. And essentially what we're going to be doing is giving it a primary theme color, a text color, and a background color. We can create light themes and dark themes depending on the background color. So a light theme being obviously a lighter background and dark text, and a dark theme being a dark background and light text, kind of like we saw with those dark yellow and dark blue themes when we were clicking around the out of the box themes. So that would be what they call a dark or an inverted theme. Let's see here. So how do we create a new custom theme? Well, we're going to have to use that theme designer, and then PowerShell is going to become our new friend here. So there's no UI for adding custom themes. In fact, there's no UI for doing anything that we're doing today except applying a site design, which we'll cover later. So you're going to need to get into PowerShell a little bit. It sounds kind of scary. As a designer, I was not happy about that at first, but it's really not that bad. If I can learn how to type in a quick commandlet for PowerShell, and so can you, it's actually really pretty easy. So we're going to need to be using SharePoint Online Management Shell, or if you prefer regular PowerShell, if you already got that set up and configured the way you like, you can install the SharePoint Online PowerShell modules to your standard PowerShell installation. SharePoint Online Management Shell is basically just a pre-configured PowerShell with those modules installed already. So you can just download the SharePoint Online Management Shell and just run that, and it's already got everything installed to be aware of SharePoint Online and be able to connect to that and everything. The command that we're going to be running is called add SPO theme, and you can see a little example of that in the image there. I will show you how to actually do this, so you're not just staring at a small picture of my screenshot of my management shell window. We can also hide out of the box themes. So if you have a couple of themes for your company that's representative of your brand, and those are the only themes that you want people to be able to choose from, we can hide those out of the box themes, so we don't have, you know, somebody from accounting applying a purple theme or an orange theme and just kind of clashing with the rest of the company approved colors. So we'll take a look at that as well in a minute. Or right now, there we go. All right, demo time. So I'm going to start up my SharePoint Online Management Shell, if I can find it. There it is. All right, SharePoint Online Management Shell. We drag that over here. Okay. I guess we don't need that just yet, because first we're going to create a custom theme with the theme designer, but now we're ready for the management shell when it's time. So instead, let me drag my window back over here, my browser window, and I'm going to go to aka.ms/theme designer. All right, so here's that long ugly URL, aka.ms/theme designer is much nicer to type, but here is the theme designer that Microsoft has built for us. Up at the top here, we get a preview of what the UI will look like as we start adjusting our colors. And over on the left-hand side here, you can see we've got those primary color bucket, the text color bucket, and the background color bucket. So we can start messing around with this and see what happens. So if I click this primary color bucket here and open up the color picker, I can adjust this guy here. Maybe we want kind of a pea soup green color. And you can see as I start messing with that, these UI elements start recoloring on the fly here. So you can get a kind of like a live preview of what that's going to look like to different elements of your site. As you start messing around with these colors, you may notice that down here, this accessibility checker starts getting a little angry and giving you these red error messages. And so what this is doing is it's checking the contrast ratio between various components of your colors and the other UI elements. And right here, it's yelling at us that we have a non-accessible color pair, that our primary color on the background color is too, there's not enough contrast between that. So they're both too light to be really easily accessible. So essentially, what it's saying is that this color on this background, people are going to have a hard time reading it, and it is. You can see on this button here, it's kind of hard to make out that white text on that light green. So in that case, you might need to start adjusting your colors a little bit and bringing that contrast down. So now as I made this a much darker green color, the accessibility checker is now happy. All of our color pairs are nice and contrasty. They're dark enough. There's enough contrast between them that everyone looking at the site shouldn't have to squint their eyes too much. So that is how we recolor really quickly the primary color bucket of the site. Now, if we scroll down a little bit here, this is where things kind of start getting interesting. In the theme slots section, you can see what we've got going on here with our theme primary. There is our kind of our dark green theme. And then there's a whole bunch of other color buckets: theme secondary, theme tertiary, theme lighter, theme darker. So what SharePoint, what this theme builder has done is it's taken our primary color and it's made some variations on that are lighter and variations of it that are darker. And what that's going to do is it's going to these buckets are going to be used in different areas of the UI. Now, if I scroll back up here and hover over this primary button, it's pretty subtle, but you might be able to see it's getting a little darker as I hover over that. So come down here and kind of look at these. Okay, here's some darker color. So one of these color slots is probably being used on that hover effect. Because I've been building these themes long enough, I know that that particular button is using the theme dark color here. So that is it gives us our little hex value here for that color. The other cool thing is that we can click on the color buckets here, the individual color buckets, and we can actually change these guys manually. So we don't have to just settle for one single color that's been selected and let SharePoint do the rest. We can actually go ahead and change out all these color buckets here that get used elsewhere. So if you have more than one theme in your organization's branding, there is a way to have a multicolor theme. By changing out some of these color buckets, you can utilize some of those, some of those accent colors or some of those additional colors that might make up your organization's brand. So let's see what that looks like. So if I click on Theme Dark Alt, let's see what happens if I change this to like a lighter blue here. Let's scroll up. You know what? I think I said that that hover effect is using theme dark. That hover effect is using theme dark alt. Apologize for that. So look at that. Now that I'm hovering over that green button, it's turning that blue color that I just set. If I hover over these checkboxes, they are also getting darker, but they're not blue. So these are using a different color bucket. And again, these are just kind of examples. There are other places in the UI that these colors will show up as well. Those guys are what uses that theme dark color. So now if I want to make those checkboxes like a fuchsia color here, There we go. When I hover over that, it turns fuchsia. So that's another example of how you can manually kind of massage these themes, so to speak, and make them a little bit more to your liking. If the out of the box riffs of the color that it made don't quite work, we have the ability to manually change those. If I get into my background color here, I can make, say, a dark background color. And this kind of gives you a preview of how we can make a darker theme for our site. So obviously this is not working here. So let's change the text color to make it a lot lighter, a very, very light gray. And this guy's a little dark too. Let's change this, I don't know, to a kind of a orangey, tan, yellowy color here. So that's how we could make a dark theme, basically by just switching the text and the background colors, making sure our primary colors are contrasty enough with that dark. Then things start looking pretty good. Also, the thing to notice when you are working with a inverted theme or a dark theme is that these color buckets kind of reverse. So down here where it's theme darker, that's actually a lot lighter than our primary theme. The theme lighter is actually darker than our primary theme. So these are inverted colors. But let's go ahead and switch this back and actually build a theme that we know we're going to work with and install here. The other thing to note I want to point out is that when you swap back between a light and a dark theme, this theme designer does not always properly reverse these buckets here. So if I make my background color white again, and make this, let's make this something really dark. This one kind of sort of did a pretty good job, but sometimes you will run into, let's see, your text color. There we go. You will run into some instances where you might still have a lighter dark color and a darker light color. So when you're switching back and forth, when you're playing with these themes, I like to just refresh the page and start over. There we go, hit the refresh button, start over with the blue, and then we can build our theme out without having to worry about the color buckets being improperly inverted. So with that being said, let's go ahead and type in our custom theme color that we're going to be using. Again, that is going to be 477 F70. There we go. That's our nice Contoso tealy green color. I'm going to darken up my text just a little bit.
Hey, Ryan.
Yeah.
Somebody wants to know, is the theme builder, the AKA MS theme builder, available under GCC? Or is there a different URL?
I don't know the answer to that, honestly.
We can take a look and find out.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll get
yeah,
back
if you just head to aka.ms/theme designer, it should shoot you right over here. Let's see here. All right, so here are my color buckets for my official theme. My primary color here, that's looking good. The neutral primary color, that's my text color. That's also looking good here. We do have a couple of variations on that, some black, some white. The white, by the way, is the background color slot here. And then finally, we have some background neutral colors here. We'll take a look at how this kind of comes into play in a little bit. But as you are working with your site and in edit mode here, all right. Come on, edit mode, let's work. All right, let's get into edit mode. My edit mode is not wanting to work for me. All right, let's try refreshing. Essentially what I'm trying to show is that there are some different colors that you can show in your section backgrounds. There we go, that's better. All right, so let me edit this section here. And with this particular green theme applied, I've got a gray background, a very light green background, or my primary color background that primary color that I could set as a background color for this section here. So these also are available to set as the header background. It's very subtle, but that is kind of a very light green background there. So now if I save this this page here, instead of having a white background, I have this very light green background. So those little color buckets are in here. They happen to be the primary, is that very dark color. Theme lighter alt is the very light version of that primary color, and neutral lighter is the gray color. So we can also, because we can adjust these individual buckets, we can change these to be different background colors if we like. So in this case, you know, this theme lighter alt is almost too light. It's almost white, so it wouldn't really show up. But you know what? Let's change this up a little bit and make this kind of like a very light tan color that kind of complements that green. You know, let's do something like that, maybe a little more yellow than tan, but we'll see. And that way we can have a very custom background color. And let's check this one out here, neutral lighter. Maybe we want that just to be slightly darker than it normally would be. The other one that sometimes we will run into is this neutral secondary. This happens to be the color that is applied to your hub site navigation up top here, if you happen to have a hub site. I've had a couple of instances where I've made a custom theme and that text in the hub navigation is just way too light because of the way that SharePoint automatically, or this, I keep saying SharePoint, but this theme designer here automatically builds these color buckets out. So you can come in here, and I have in certain cases come in here and made that text color quite a bit darker. In fact, I believe that this accessibility checker was yelling about that neutral secondary color being a little bit too light. So that's one thing that we just took care of. So you know what? I think we're happy with this theme. I think we're looking pretty good here. Let's go ahead and see how we actually go ahead and install this. So up in the upper right hand corner, I have this export theme button. I click that, and it brings out this little panel here and gives me a few different options of getting this theme out of the theme designer. So what I'm going to do for our purposes here is click this PowerShell tab, and I'm just going to click in the window here and just do Control A, select all, and now I'm going to copy this. So you can see I've got all of my theme color buckets all paired up there. I'm going to right click, I'm going to copy this. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up Notepad, bring that over. All right, I'm going to just paste this theme into Notepad here. These themes don't get saved anywhere from the theme designer. There's no way to just save it anywhere. So I like to save these as just a text file, especially building a lot of themes for clients. I like to be able to reference back to these, and also, you know, if you need to make a change to your theme at some point, you have the original one. We can also pull this up once we install it into SharePoint. We can pull it up with PowerShell, but a lot of times it's just easier to just have a text file on your machine that you can reference and edit if you need to. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to save this theme, and we're going to save that as, let's call it the Contoso green theme. So now I can reference back to this. Completely optional step. You do not have to save these themes at all, but I personally like to have a record, especially if I'm building several different versions of a theme and I'm not quite sure which one I ended up liking in the end. I can go back and reference to see which color I used for the primary theme on a particular version of that. So just a little tip there, something I like to do, completely optional. If you don't like that, you can just completely bypass that step. But essentially, we have our theme copied now and saved if you need to do that. So now what do we need to do? Now we need to actually open up our SharePoint Online Management shell. So now we can actually do this. So we're going to install this theme into SharePoint, into our SharePoint Online site. So now that I've opened up PowerShell or my SharePoint Online Management shell, the first thing I need to do is I need to actually connect to my tenant. So I can't just get in here and start typing commands. It's gonna not know what site I'm talking about. So what I need to do is I need to connect into my SharePoint admin tenant. So when you go to your SharePoint Admin Center, you are going to see that you have this particular URL right here. Or in this instance, my tenant name is RSK2. the admin site is your tenant name -admin.sharepoint.com. So that's the URL we're going to need. Let me shrink that down. So how do we connect up? We need to run this connect SPO service. And then the URL is -admin.sharepoint.com. So basically your tenant name -admin. So I'm going to hit enter. And it's going to pop up a login window here. Let me go ahead and log in. And there we go. It doesn't really give us any confirmation. It didn't error out, so that's a good sign. But the way that we can check to see that we're actually connected to our site is get-spo site. And this command is just going to return all the different site collections in your tenant. So here we go. There's my webinar demo site. Here's my run-through site that I was working on, getting everything set up. A few other sites that come with your tenant by default. But yeah, that looks like my site. So cool, we're connected. You also may see as you're experimenting with this and kind of looking things up, a lot of examples online also tell you to provide credentials within your Connect SPO service, and that's totally fine. You can do that, and it'll just bring up a little, a small little login window. If you have multi-factor authentication or use some other sort of sign-in service, you're going to just want to run it just like this, Connect SPO service, and give it a URL to get that nice web window to log in. That way you can use your multi-factor authentication or whatever other sign-in service you're using. So now that we're connected, I'm going to clear that. First thing I need to do is set my theme to a variable. So a variable in PowerShell is just a word or whatever you want it to be that we can reference later. So the way we start a variable in PowerShell is we start with a $sign and then we type the variable name. So in this case, I'm going to say the variable name is color palette. And I'm going to say that color palette is equal to that block of code that I copied from the theme designer. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter and see that it just pastes all that in there for me on each line. Hit enter. There we go. And so what this is actually doing, this little at squiggly bracket here, that's making a hash table in PowerShell. So now if I type my variable name, it is case sensitive, just to warn you. If you're typing color palette without a capital P there, that actually worked. I'm surprised that worked. Anyway, a lot of times that is case sensitive, so ignore me. Apparently I don't spend enough time in PowerShell, I guess. So anyway, there's my color palette variable. You can see that it's got all my colors here. It did slightly rearrange them, but here's my theme primary color block. Here's my background color. Here is my theme secondary color right here that we changed for that hub navigation link color. Okay, so what do we do with this? So now we've actually put our theme into a variable in PowerShell. Now we actually get to install that theme. And the way we do that is we do add SPO theme. So add-SPO theme. And the identity, add an identity switch, we give it a name here. We'll call this Contoso Green. All right. Then the next switch we need is the palette. And the way we give it the palette for what we want our theme to be colorized with is we give it that variable we just set. The palette is the color palette variable. And finally, it asks, is it inverted? No, it's not. So that is false. So that's just kind of Boolean value there, true, false. So if we made a dark theme with a dark background, light text, we would say true. It also helps SharePoint know other elements of the site to recolor to be more contrasty with that dark theme. So that's why it asks, is it an inverted theme or not? So it's not, so we're going to say false. Okay, and there we go. Again, no confirmation within PowerShell, but we can also say get-SPO theme. And that's going to list out, if we have more than one custom theme in here, that's going to list out all of our custom themes. And let me go ahead and open up my browser window again, jump back over to my webinar demo site. And if I open up change the look and open up theme, there we go. We've got our Contoso green theme installed. So now when I click that, you can see that a lot of these elements of the page start looking a lot more in line with our custom color here. So now we're starting to look pretty good. And there's that background color that we set. Instead of it being a very light green, that's now kind of a light yellow or light tan there. So that's cool. Let's go ahead and save that for now and take a look at that all together. Let me go ahead and refresh this page. Sometimes if you're switching between different themes, you may notice once you close that theme window that things might revert back to an old theme. It's just because of the way SharePoint caches things, not because it's broken. So a refresh oftentimes will just reapply your theme properly and make it look nice for you. So cool. There's our theme. We're looking pretty good here. Let's take a look at one more thing here. Change the look theme. We have our custom theme. And we have all our out-of-the-box themes, but again, we don't want people just being able to pick a purple theme. So what do we do about that? We can open up our PowerShell window again, and we can run a quick little commandlet that is going to hide those out-of-the-box themes. And as we saw in this slide here, that is set-spo hide default themes, and then we set that to true. Let me jump back into here. All right, set-spo hide default themes true. Let me just run that. There we go. And if I open up my window, that's also an instant change. So I haven't refreshed the page or anything. I'm going to go to change the look, open up themes, and just like that, all those out of the box themes are gone. So easy enough. If we want to put them back, I'm just going to hit up to bring up my last command that I just ran. I'm going to set this to false. So basically it's saying, do I want to hide the default themes? False. No, I do not. Hit enter and back up, hit themes again. There we go. It's back. So I'm going to go ahead and set this to a purple theme here just so we can see a change later on with our site scripts and site design. All right. So there we go. That's our custom theme. We got that installed. We're looking good. Let's move on. Let's see. All right, so site scripts. So what the heck is a site script? It's basically the new way of making a template. So the old way of doing things in SharePoint in classic sites or 2010, 2013, 2016, you could build a site and save it as a template that would have all your libraries and lists and columns and everything. Generally speaking, was limited to classic team sites. So what about the new way? What about in SharePoint Online? We build site scripts as kind of like a repeatable to-do list for SharePoint to follow. So it's in other words a list of tasks that SharePoint can perform after a site's been created. For example, those tasks could be something like create a list or library, or create a site column and add those to your list. Create content types. In our case here, we're going to say apply a theme, or we can set a logo, or we can remove and add navigation options, set some branding properties. So there's even a lot more than that, but this is a lot of the common branding related ones you might see. So again, what is a site script? It's just a JSON file. You build it in a text editor like Visual Studio Code or Notepad, and it's just really a set of actions and sub-actions, or basically a bunch of verbs that tell SharePoint what to do. It's generally non-destructive, so if you make changes to your site script later and add columns, and part of that site script says, make a list. It's not going to rewrite over to your existing list. It's just going to add the changes to that list. So if you add a column, it's going to simply add the column to that list. So it's not really going to destroy anything unless your changes involve removing navigation items. But generally speaking, they're non-destructive, so you can rerun them without worrying about it wiping out a list and then rebuilding it fresh. Again, we're going to be using PowerShell to actually install our site script file, and the commandlet for that is add-spo site script. And we'll see here in a little bit that once we install a site script, it doesn't really do anything. It's just going to sit there until we call it in with a site design. So as we're going to see, a site design and a site script really go hand in hand. So we can't, a site script can't do anything without a site design, and a site design is pretty much useless unless you tell it to use a site script. Okay, so we're going to do another quick little demo, an overview of a site script. We'll build a simple site script and then we'll install a site script. So let me get my files up here. And we are going to take a look at if I can find it. Yeah.
We have a question.
Awesome.
Will site scripts work with hub sites?
Say that one more time.
Will site scripts work with hub sites?
They will. Yes, they sure will.
Excellent.
All right. So here is a very simple, well, relatively simple site script. This is actually the one we're going to install. I'll show you how to build something like this in a minute. But essentially, this is a site script here that's made up of several actions. And within this little actions block here, I have a bunch of verbs. So this verb or this action says apply theme. What theme do we want to apply? I'm going to give it the name of the theme that we installed, Contoso Green. And that's the only action we're going to do here. Next action, set the site branding. So in this case, there's a few different options like setting the header size if you want a compact header, or changing the navigation style, or if you want to change the background from a white background to one of your theme colors, you can do that here as well. You would instead of saying none for the header background, you would say neutral or soft or strong is the color buckets that they call those different theme colors there. We can set a site logo. And then we provide a URL for that logo, which that reminds me, I'm going to have to put a logo file in my site so we can reference that in a little bit. And then finally, we're going to be removing some navigation links. That happens to be these particular links here, these home, documents, pages, site contents, these that come standard out of the box. Probably most of the time, you're not going to really want these on a final published site. So this site script gives us a really quick way of just automatically removing these on every site that we run this on. And then we can add whatever links we want. So finally, at the end of this, we're going to have it add in a link to our Pate Group website just for fun. So how do we build one of these things? Okay, it looks kind of complicated, but really and truly, it's pretty darn easy. Let me open up a new tab here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a Google search for site design JSON. And this first option here, site design JSON schema, technically we're building a site script, but this is what we do a search for here. If I open up this page here, this is really, really well documented. So this page will be your friend when you're constructing your site script. And we start out with this little block right here, and that's the beginning of our site script. Over on the right-hand side, we have a lot of different actions that we can do within this site script. So like here, apply a theme. If I click on this, it jumps me down to all the information I need to know about how to apply a theme in a site script and what properties I need to set, setting a logo, or, here's another one, creating a new list in SharePoint. So this is, one of those tasks that would be really handy to have from before, when we had the ability to just save a site as a template and build it out with all the existing lists and libraries. We can tell it, I want you to make me a document library. Scroll down a little further in the section, it tells you exactly what you need to do here. So in this case, I'm going to go all the way back up to the top, and I'm going to start out with this little code block right here. I'm just going to click the copy button. I'm going to switch back over to Visual Studio Code here. You can just do this in any old text editor. I just happen to like Visual Studio Code. I'm going to make a new file. And I'm going to click on this plain text link down here. And I'm going to type JSON so it knows this is a JSON file, so I get the nice JSON formatting. I'm going to paste that in. So here is my action block right here. And so in between here, these two ellipses and the line in between them, so basically lines 4, 5, and 6, this is where all my actions are going to go. So let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and grab the code for applying a theme. So here's an example code block that you can kind of start from. So let's just go ahead and copy that, switch to Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to actually replace lines 4, 5, and 6 with that code that I just copied here. Clean up my formatting a little bit. There we go. So there we go. There's our first action. Apply theme. What's the theme name? Well, it's not Blue Yonder. It is Contoso Green. Okay, cool. What next? Let's have it apply a site logo. Let's set a site logo. So here's, I just jumped down to that section. I'm going to copy this example code block here. And every time you have a new action, you're going to want to put a comma after that squiggly bracket, then paste it in. If you don't have a comma after that, it's going to yell at you. The only exception is the last item in your actions list here does not need a comma. So here we go. This next action, verb, set site logo. No, that's not where it's going to be. So I'm going to actually give it the correct URL. I'm going to put this at site assets/logo.png. So I'm going to actually put a real file there in a minute. If you're, this is going to reference it from the site assets library at the root site. If it's not at the root site, so maybe we want it to be, you know, our webinar demo site, sites/webinar demo. There we go, /site assets/logo. That's how you would do that. But this is going to be at the root of my site, so everybody can access that logo file. And that's basically all there is to it for working with the site script. Again, if I was going to add another action, I would put a comma, new line, and then paste in my next block of code. But that's really all there is to making a site script. So let's take a look at this one more time here. We're going to actually install this particular site script. Before I do that, let me add my logo file to my root site. All right, I'm going to open up my site contents here. And I don't have a site assets library. That's a library that's SharePoint kind of puts together for you. The easiest way really is to just add an image to your page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my home page here. I'm going to edit this page. Again, this is the root site here, even though it looks just like my other site. I'm going to add a section. And let's just add in an image web part. I'm going to upload webinars, this one. I'm going to upload my logo file here. There we go. Add the image. Okay. Now if I jump into my site contents, there we go. There's my site assets library. It just adds it for you automatically. And it put that logo file in the site pages folder. I don't need this anymore, so I'm actually just going to delete this. And I am going to drag in this logo file here. There we go, logo.png. So that's my logo file here. If I view the original, it gives me the full URL of that file there. So that's cool. Now we've got, I think I just closed something I didn't mean to close. All right. Let me jump back to my webinar demo. All right, cool. So now what do? We need to install our site script. So I have that site script saved right here, webinar site script.json. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click this little copy path button. This is really, really handy if you don't have this in a really easily accessible place to type a short path. So I'm going to click on copy path. And I am going to switch back to my management shell. Let me clear this out. And the way we install this is with a few different variables here. So let me go ahead and type out a few variables. Site title. Again, these variables can be anything as long as you reference them correctly later on. Site title, let's call this Contoso site script. Next, I'm going to set not site title. Let's do a script title equals Contoso site script. And let's do script path. I'm going to paste in that path that I just copied there. Let me put a space in between here. So now I can verify script path. There's my long path to that file. All right, finally, I'm going to start one called script content. And this is going to be script content equals, and I'm going to run another command here for this, get content at the script path. And and we want the raw contents of that file. So let me type this out, script content, and see exactly what we got going on here. All right, yep, this looks like the contents of my site script file. So that's cool. So we've got the contents. Now, how do we actually add that in? So I'm going to type in script content. Then we're going to pipe that with the pipe character into the commandlet here. Add SPO site script. We're going to give it a title of Contoso site script. There we go. Awesome. So we've just installed our site script to our site. Now, again, this ID here is automatically assigned. Again, this site script isn't doing anything because now we need to actually reference it with a site design. So let's go back and take a look at what that actually means here. All right, site designs. So a site design actually runs the site script. You can have more than one site script attached to a site design. So if we had, say, one site script that applied the logo and set the theme, we could also have a second site script that makes a bunch of libraries. So there is a lot of ways you can make this very modular within your modern site. So if you have one script that again applies your branding, you could have several other site scripts that do different things in your other sites. So a lot of power there. With a site design, there's not an actual file to install like we just did with a site script. The site designs are all built in in PowerShell, excuse me, with the command add SPO site design. So there's a couple of different parameters for communication sites and team sites, not huge amount of differences, but there are certain actions that you cannot do in a team site. For instance, we can't set the logo of a team site. There are some various ways around that using PNP PowerShell, but we're not going to get into that today. But just know that on a team site, a modern team site, we cannot set the logo. Unfortunately, it's just one of those little limitations that certain site types have. We can activate our site design from the UI by going to the settings gear and then selecting site designs, or we can run it from PowerShell. So if you do have a lot of sites already created and you do need to loop through those sites and apply the site design and save yourself a bunch of clicks, you can actually do that with PowerShell using a little looping command. Again, we're not going to get into that. It's a little more advanced than what we're going to do today, but it is possible to do that. So next up, how do we apply the site design? We can, again, install it with PowerShell. They can be applied to a communication site or a team site. They can run during site creation. When you first create a site, you can select your site design, or you can run it after the fact. So if you have an existing site, you can run a site design after the fact as well. You also have the ability, when you set up a hub site, you can pick a site design to automatically run when sites are attached to that hub. So there's a lot of different ways that we can run our site design and apply our changes to the site. You can also set those site designs as one of the default options to replace those showcase, topic, or blank. So when you select, the out-of-the-box showcase as you're making a new site, communication site in particular, that will replace the showcase and run your site design instead. A lot of times I kind of like to just keep that separate. It's not, again, not destructive. So if you decide you don't want your custom site design to replace one of those after you've already set it, we just remove the site design. It goes back to normal with one of the out of the boxes there, and then we can just re-add it and not replace. One thing to note, despite the name, a site design doesn't actually change the page content. So this is kind of one of those things that people get tripped up on a lot, is that it sounds like a site design is like a true template, that we're changing the layout of the page, and we'll have, all our department sites have these exact same web parts and sections and everything. Site design does not do that. It just runs our site scripts. So that's one thing to really keep in mind. You can run multiple site designs on a site, and they can be rerun multiple times. So if you update your site scripts, you can rerun that site design as many times as you need to on your sites. And finally, we're not gonna show this in an example today, but you can scope your site designs to certain users or groups. So if you have you know, a product group that needs to create certain sites that utilize a certain site design, but that's the only group in the organization that should be able to run that. We can scope these site designs to only show up for a certain group of people. So that could also be very helpful. All right, so let's create a site design real quick. I know we're kind of getting close to time here, or we're at time. But let's do this pretty quick. We'll build a site design real fast. We'll specify the script to use, and then we'll test it in SharePoint. So let me go ahead and bring up my management shell window here. And the way we're going to do this is we are going to run a command called add SPO site design. But first we need to set a few different variables here. So I'm going to do a variable called site design title. Let's call this the Contoso site. So we're going to make a Contoso site out of this. We're going to set another variable called site design template 68. This basically means that this particular site design is only going to run on a communication site or be applied to a communication site. If we wanted to do a team site, we would change this to 64. They're very arbitrary numbers. Just know 68 means communication site, 64 means team site. So we're going to do this on a team site. I'm going to leave that at 68 there. And finally, site design description applies Contoso logo and theme. And finally, site design package ID. Basically, again, this is also very arbitrary. I'm going to just paste this in the interest of time for my cheat sheet over here. A bunch of zeros. So this GUID here essentially just means that this is going to be using that showcase template that we start out with in a communication site, basically the standard SharePoint online site. When we make a new site, what the page looks like. And then finally, we're going to provide a script ID. So in this case, we have our script ID right here since we just installed it. But let's say, you know, we didn't have that. I'm going to put that in quotes, paste that in. If I needed to get my script ID, I can run get SPO site script. And this is going to spit out a list of all the different site scripts I have in here and their associated IDs. So in this case, I only have the one site script installed. So that's the only one that shows up here. If I had more than one, all of them would show up. And this way I can, you know, just easily copy that ID and paste it into my script variable here. Now, finally, I'm going to run the actual command, and in the interest of time, I'm going to actually paste this in here without having to type everything out. Hopefully I didn't do any typos up in my variables here, but essentially what we're doing, we're running add SPO site design, and then we have all these different properties here. We have the title. It's going to pull in that site design title from our variable we set. What template are we using? We're doing site template variable. Right here, I could have easily just done 68 or 64 and saved myself a whole bunch of typing, but this way you kind of see how it all works together with those variables. What site scripts are we using? So right here, we're just using the one. If we had more than one site script, we could actually, you know, paste those into this commandlet here and just separate them out with commas. What's our description? What's our design package ID? Is this default? No, it's not. We're not going to replace one of those out of the box site designs. So that's set to false. Let's go ahead and run that. And there we go. Gives us a little bit of information on what we just installed here. This is the design package, or excuse me, the site design ID. Here's our title, here's our template, here's our scripts that we're using. We're just using the one in this case. There's our theme. So let's see what that actually did. Let's go back to our site here. I'm going to click on my settings gear. I'm going to click site designs. And look at that. I can choose a site design, and there's my Contoso site that I just installed. All right, so let's go ahead and see what this is going to do. I select that and I get the option to apply it to site, and it also gives me a preview of everything that it's going to do. It's going to apply my theme. It's going to update the branding. It's going to set the logo, a whole bunch of other stuff. Let's go ahead and see what happens when I click apply to site. and we're off. So this gives you a little progress indicator of what it's doing. Sometimes it sits here for a while and it doesn't look like it's doing anything. Sometimes it just blows right through all these tasks in 2 seconds. We'll just see what goes on here today. You can also, especially if you have a very, very big site design you're running here, you can close this and keep working. Now, if I refresh the page, let's see if I get my message here. Yep. While it's working, it says it's applying the site design. So we can view the progress here and see what it's actually doing, which is nothing yet. But as soon as it's done, it's going to run through all these options here, and then we'll refresh the page and everything will be set. There we go. So it just finished up. It kind of did everything all at once. But we have check marks next to everything, means everything worked. Let's go ahead and view our updated site. So this basically just refreshes the site here. And look at that, it automatically applied our logo. It removed our navigation items, added our Pate group link, and set our theme for us here. So we're looking good. I think that site design we can call a success. The other thing we can do in the admin center, in my SharePoint admin center, I should say, I can create a new site, or I can do this also from my create site link or from my SharePoint site page here. Wherever I can create a site from, and I pick communication site, there's my Contoso site. So I can select that here as a new site. Same thing with the admin center. If I click on create, select communication, there's my Contoso site. Proof. Look at that, proof that it works. I'll be the owner. Now we can make that site. It's making it for us. It's automatically going to run that. Let's open the site up here. We're going to get a little note that says it is still making it. So let's view the progress. It's grinding away. In a minute or so, this site here, without having to do anything extra, now automatically gets our logo, removes the navigation, sets the theme, and adds this Pate group link to the navigation. So there we go, proof that it worked. So we can run that on any site we want. If we have an existing site, we can also do that, just like we did before, how we had our webinar demo site. We just go to site designs. Since this already ran on here, I don't get the drop down here, but right at the very bottom of this, I've got this link for available site designs. Now I can pick that Contoso site and I can actually just rerun this as well. We don't need to sit and watch that. A couple of references. There's that theme designer that we looked at, aka.ms/theme designer. And then finally, the site script JSON reference. There's the URL, but it's just so much easier to just do a search for site design JSON, and it's the first option that comes right up. All right. I know we're way over time. I apologize for that. A lot of exciting stuff to cover today. But if anybody has any questions, feel free to let Stacy know. Otherwise, we can wrap up.
We do have one question.
Awesome. Yeah.
Wanting to know about moving the search bar. You know, at the top of the SharePoint page, you have the search bar. Is that something that is changeable?
Kind of. This is kind of the new place for SharePoint search. They've really kind of tried to make this consistent with, say, Teams, where a lot of your apps are going to have the search bar in that header area. There are some PowerShell commands that you can run that can hide this if you really want to, but then you have no search for your site. You can rescope the search a little bit with those commands, but as far as actually hiding it, not really. There's no out-of-the-box options to do that. I know that's a change that has been rolling out, so some people also may still have a search box in the right-hand side of their header. At some point in the next month or so, I would say look for that to be moved up to your navigation bar, sweet bar, top bar, whatever you want to call that.
Okay, that was it.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. I appreciate everybody's time. Appreciate you guys sticking around for a little bit. and hope you guys got a lot of good information out of this session. So that's all I've got, and I guess hope everybody has a great day. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And stay tuned for future webinars. Our next webinar will be on Tuesday on Forms, Microsoft Forms. So we'll
Awesome,
hope to see you there.
Check that one out. That'll be good.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
Bye.